Hi everyone. I had forgotten to put this video up. I had this document prepared and forgot to put it up. That's what happens when the semester rushes through. So I want to talk about what makes a good thesis for your food writing project. This is basically a lot of the same document. I basically adapted this document from the document that I gave you on how to write a language and identity thesis. So same basic thing, but I want to just kind of emphasize what you might think about in terms of food. And again, a lot of this language is exactly the same. So, of course, a good thesis needs to respond to the topic you are given in the assignment, right? And that's something that most of us are completely aware of. However, it must also be something that requires evidence to prove that it's true. Realize that the only reason an essay exists is to prove a thesis, so the thesis controls everything that will be included in the essay. And then just idea that you need to prove something to be true, and so your thesis needs to set up something that needs to be proved. So let's look at what a thesis that isn't going to work would look like. So a poor thesis for the food identity writing project would be: a food my family likes to eat on special occasions is oxtails. Right? Some of you I know like oxtails. Some of you may not be familiar. Some of you I know are probably very into oxtails. But we could just say a food my family likes to eat on special occasions is oxtails. I say that's a poor thesis because even though it might be true that your family likes to eat oxtails on special occasions, right? They do, right? I'm just telling you that. There's nothing to be proved here, right? And I say, I guess you could have quotes from various family members to say that yes, they do like to eat oxtails on special special occasions, but that's not much of an essay, right? So just to say my family likes to eat oxtails is like, what? I don't know what to do with that. And so if you're thinking about, how am I going to write 1,000 words on this? If you've got a thesis like this, you're not going to be able to get 1,000 words out of something. So let's look at what a better thesis would be. Because I was born and raised in the United States, I sometimes feel disconnected from my immigrant parents. However, on special occasions when my mother cooks oxtails, I feel as if I understand my parents better than at any other time in my life. Now, that's still mentioning food. It's still mentioning the importance of oxtails. It's still mentioning the oxtails on special occasions, but it is talking about this idea of feeling disconnected from immigrant parents. And here's a way in which we can potentially feel more connected to them through this food. When we sit down and eat food, I feel like there is something going on here, right? Sometimes I don't know who are these people who used to live in this other country, and I don't understand anything about that, but there's something about this food that brings us all together. So I say that's a good thesis because it will require a lot of explanation to prove that it's true, right? The writer would need to explain how and why they feel disconnected from their parents. So they would have to explain that, which requires some family history, maybe including examples of their different tastes in everyday food, right? They're always eating this other stuff, and I'd really just want hamburgers and pizza or whatever. So I don't know what's going on with them. But then we say, and then we provide some history about the dish, when it is eaten, what are those special occasions, why it is eaten every day. This is where the writer would include some information from interviews. We could talk to family members and talk about why oxtails become something that are so important. And then finally, the writer would need to describe how the food makes them feel connected to their family. And it could easily take 1,000 words to explain that. So again, having a good thesis is going to matter. We're just going to say, as a fact, this is what my family eats. That's not going to work. But if we want to talk about how that food provides some kind of connection to somebody in this very specific instance, then that's something that's going to require the 1,000 words. Um, we can go through here these pairs of theses again, just like before. I love to eat at McDonald's with my brothers and sisters. That's not very good because it's just factual. I'd like to eat at McDonald's. My brothers and sisters would like to eat at McDonald's. There's not much to say about that. But then we say, although McDonald's isn't usually considered a family food, it is a food that brings me and my siblings together in ways that no other food can. Now we have to prove something. Why does that happen, right? What is it about your family history? Where did this whole thing about you and your brothers sisters going to McDonald's? Well, it was because when we were in middle school, we'd be walking home from school. There was McDonald's nearby, and we were a kid. When we were younger, we would always stop off there, and that had became a tradition. And then as we've gotten older, we've kept up that tradition so that even though we're not walking home from school, it's something we're always going to be doing. And you might have some interview with a sibling explaining their perspective on some of that. So there's a lot more to be able to say about something like this than just saying, well, I eat there with them. right? Well, why is it, right? How did that become a family food for you, even though that's something that we don't consider? So B would definitely be better there. When my grandmother was alive, it seemed as if she was always cooking cabbage for me, even though I hated it. Now that she's dead, I love cabbage because of how it reminds me of the time we spent together. Right, now we need to think about what that is. Now, this is better than saying, I used to hate cabbage, but now I love it, right? That might be true. You used to hate cabbage, but now I love it. But they're thinking about how we love it because it reminds us it reminds this person of their grandmother. Let's think about that time that they spent together. Let's think about why was this person spending time with their grandmother? Oh, she used to watch me all the time after school, and she would be cooking food, and I even hated the smell of cabbage, and I hated eating it. But now, when that she's dead and I'm older, I think about what it means to spend that I was lucky to have all that time that I spent with her in her kitchen eating this food, and it's become something important to me. All right, that's a whole lot more stuff to talk about. We might have an interview with her mother or father about, do you remember eating cabbage when I was a kid? Do you remember what when you were a kid or when I was a kid or anything like that? And so this A is definitely going to be better in that regard. Number three, although I still love mangoes, I don't have the same feeling eating them as I did when I was a kid. When I was young, rather. When I was a kid, we had a mango tree in the yard, and eating them made me feel connected to the land that we lived on in a way that I don't think I will ever feel again. I kind of adapted this for my life. I used to have a big old mango tree in my backyard when I grew up. But this sense of what that mango meant to you as a person, right? And I think it's important that for this one, I'm not talking about family. I'm talking about what it feels like to be a kid and feel like connected to. Hold on, we're still there. To feel somewhat connected to the land in some ways. Sorry, just a little bit of a glitch there. But yeah, but just that sense of talking about what it means to be a kid. So again, if you're feeling like, wait, I don't have this sense of a connection to family in that same way for whatever reasons, you don't have to write about that. This sense of what it meant for me to be young and to be a child and live on this land and have this mango, right? And you can see if I just say when I was a kid, I loved eating mangoes right off the tree in our yard. Again, that's just the basic fact of it, but we don't have to prove this sense of what it felt like to actually eat those mangoes. Okay. Number four, I used to love eating from the empanada truck in my old neighborhood. Again, that's just a fact. I just used to like to eat that. There's not much to say about that. But if we want to say, I used to love eating at the empanada truck in my own neighborhood because when I came to New York City, nothing made me feel more like a real New Yorker than grabbing a quick and delicious meal that I could eat while I walked. And again, that has nothing to do with family. It doesn't even have to do with growing up. It's just the sense of walking around the city. What are the foods you like in the city and why? How do you feel connected to that? And this sense of being able to just grab something off the street. I love eating street food off the street and just walking around the city and what that makes you feel like. And so again, it doesn't have to do with anything like family. It doesn't have to do with the relationship even. It just has to do with, well, I guess the relationship that you have to yourself, how it is that you think about yourself. And so that is a perfectly acceptable thesis. However, you don't want to just say, this is a food I like. We explain, this is why I like this. This is the connection that I want to draw. And then you can see how that requires an entire essay to be able to explain. Then number five, the only food I know how to cook is spaghetti. Not much to say about that. It just that's all I know how to cook. But if we say, even though I don't really know how to cook, I can make spaghetti, and being able to make a meal for myself that I really enjoy makes me feel like an adult. It's a very different kind of a thing here, right? And just not just saying that I that's the only thing I know how to cook, but here's what this food says about me, right? Here's what it says about my relationship to myself, how I feel in terms of being an adult, and so that becomes something that we can potentially prove here, and we're going to provide some more evidence for that. So keep these in mind, right? What makes a good thesis, some good possible theses. I've posted this in the folder in Blackboard, in the to complete folder for July 21st in Blackboard, so you can review it again. But just keep all that in mind as you begin to work on your outlines.